Good morning. I stand here excited to present these guidelines to you today. What was once a thought back in 2003 between myself and my colleagues turned into myself teaming up with Dr. Casa and forming what Dr. Casa kindly referred to as the Dream Team, a group of highly respected professionals from various disciplines focused on heat acclimatization at the secondary school level. These guidelines are unique to the NATA and to secondary school athletes across the country for two reasons. The first being that this is the first time the NATA has gone beyond providing information for injury prevention. We have developed specific guidelines with a detailed progression. It's a phase-in program involving duration, intensity, frequency, and the issuing of equipment. Also, it is the first time that heat acclimatization guidelines are specific to secondary school athletes. The recommendations, however, as Dr. Casa explained, are only minimal guidelines. They're based on the best heat acclimatization evidence available. Following these guidelines provides all secondary school athletes an opportunity to train safely and effectively during the preseason practice time. Before participating in preseason practice period, all student athletes should undergo a pre-participation examination or a PPE. And this should be done by a physician or as required by state law. The PPE helps identify predisposing factors related to a number of safety concerns for the athlete. And youths are at particular risk for exertional heat illness. So we need to be of particular interest, or we need to hold them in particular interest for preseason athletics. Many people associate these guidelines with football. However, that may not be, or that should not be our main focus. The guidelines may and should be applied to all sports. And now, what you've all been waiting for, the meat and potatoes of this menu. As Dr. Casa indicated, the first 2 to 3 days are critical for acclimatization. So first I will cover days 1 through 5. During that time, 1 practice per day is allowed and not to exceed 3 hours in length. A walkthrough following a 3-hour recovery period is also permitted. We feel at the secondary school level, walkthroughs are important. It's an opportunity to provide teaching time. You may have a freshman athlete who has never played the game, and we need to have as much eye-to-eye contact as possible. So we will allow a walkthrough, again, following a 3-hour recovery time in a cooled environment. If practice is interrupted by inclement weather or by heat restrictions, the practice may recommence once conditions are deemed safe. However, total practice time should not exceed 3 hours in length. What we wouldn't want to have happen is a practice time to start, and then 2 hours into the practice, we have lightning, and which may last, let's say, 20 minutes, a half an hour, and now we're another hour into the practice. We don't want that practice dragging on to a 4 or 5 hour period of time. So the clock, the practice time clock continues to run even while the athletes are not participating. Sports requiring helmets and shoulder pads. For days 1 to 2, a helmet is the only protective equipment permitted. In the case of goalies, again, as I mentioned, let's not just focus on football, but all sports. So in the case of goalies during field hockey or other related sports, again, the helmet is the only piece of protective equipment that they should be wearing. We should refrain from any activity that will involve any protective equipment on the goalie. Days 3 to 5, helmets and shoulder pads can be worn. In football only, players are allowed to contact with blocking sleds. Tackling dummies may begin also. And then on day 6, for all sports, all protective equipment and full contact may begin. After 6 consecutive days of practice, on the 7th day we rest. You must have 24 hours of continuous rest after 6 days of activity. Now we go into the second week of preseason, days 8 through 14. This will follow a 2-1-2-1 format, which means double practice days must be followed by a single practice day. When a double practice day is followed by a rest day, another double practice day may resume. So, what I'm saying is if on a Monday there's a double practice day and the coach decides to give the team off on a Tuesday, Wednesday may be a double practice day. On a double practice day, neither practice should exceed 3 hours in duration, and there should not be any more than 5 total hours of practice in a given day. Warm-up, stretching, cool down, walk-through, conditioning, and weight room activities are not included, or excuse me, are included as the practice time. They are included. And 2 practices should be separated by at least 3 continuous hours of rest and recovery in a cool environment. So rest and recovery is not going back out on the football field going through a walkthrough. And I leave you with our final, or my final statement, that as we all know, due to the high risk of heat illness during preseason practice sessions, we strongly recommend that an athletic trainer be on site before, during, and after all practices. I've heard a couple coaches over the past few years say to me regarding our guidelines, every day thousands and thousands of secondary school athletes practice, and we may have 1 death resulting. That's really not too bad. Well, as far as we're concerned, 1 is too many. Thank you.